Russia's army is getting smaller. While the Russian advance has come to a halt along large parts of the front, the Russian army is now consistently losing more soldiers in combat than it can recruit. Russia won't be able to continue like this for much longer and will have to resort to coercion again, as recently happened in a Russian city where men were forced off the street to sign up. In this video, I'll show you why the Russians are currently facing growing personnel problems that are increasingly calling Russia's success in this war into question. Holy cow, now save the most at Holy with my code. Since the Russians were defeated in front of Kiev in 2022, and then again in the Balaklia offensive in the fall, Russia has returned to its proven model of warfare: lots of manpower. In 2022 and 2023, especially regarding artillery and vehicles, but also soldiers. Since Russia has only been using infiltration tactics, it is mainly the men themselves who are being used in large numbers for territorial gains. The losses are horrendous, often 30,000 soldiers per month. But Russia was able to cover this from 2023 to 2025 by recruiting volunteers. However, by 2025, the number of recruits had already dropped by 10% compared to 2024. In the first 3 months of 2026, only 71,200 people received the recruitment bonus from the Russian Ministry of Defense, which is paid for joining the military to participate in the war. That's 20% fewer than the 89,600 who were recruited during the same period the previous year. It didn't help that the bonuses for signing a contract increased significantly this year, in some cases by 50 to 90% in just 1.5 months. That, of course, implies insufficient results in recruitment. And all of this while the Russian economy is coming under increasing pressure. Now the Ukrainians say that since September, the Russians have not managed to recruit more than they lose. And in fact, there are now the classic signs of a personnel shortage, namely the use of specialists as infantry. As a result, not only infantrymen are increasingly being sent on assault missions. At the front, there are also logistics staff, technicians, and other military personnel deployed who were not originally prepared for such tasks. On the Russian mill blogger Maxim Kalashnikov's channel, a Russian soldier reports on his experiences. Half of the soldiers in the artillery battalion, who were already skilled in handling their guns and could shoot well, were transferred to the infantry by their commanders. It is impossible to claim that this was an isolated case. Almost every soldier can give a dozen examples of such treatment of specialists. It was similar, for example, in the fall of 2023 with the Ukrainian units that fought in Avdiivka. It was reported at the time that support personnel and specialists were being used as infantry, a clear sign of a shortage of personnel. To maintain its offensive efforts, Russia now also has to draw on its strategic reserves. The reason for this is not only insufficient recruitment, but above all, excessively high losses. Instead of adjusting the scale of its offensive efforts to match recruitment successes, the losses have now remained consistently too high. Zelensky reports, Russian losses reached their highest level since the beginning of the war in March of this year. Our drone attacks alone resulted in 33,988 Russian soldiers being killed or severely wounded, while artillery and other attacks eliminated another 1,363 Russian occupiers. That means more than 35,000 Russian losses in just 1 month, and these are clearly verified losses. We have video documentation for each and every one of these attacks in our system. According to the Ukrainians, 34,000 soldiers were visually confirmed to have been eliminated in March by drones alone. I'm always focused on optimization. This, of course, includes vitamins and minerals. At first, Torsten Heinrich was hesitant about AG1. I tested it for 5 months before promoting it. Since I've started taking it regularly, I don't want to be without it, and even bring it when I travel. AG1 replaces up to 15 basic supplements such as vitamin C, A, B12 calcium, magnesium, zinc, and much more. It gives me the feeling that I can be more productive and that my immune system is stronger. Since I've been taking it, I've only had a moderate cold once. That's it. Its effectiveness is supported by 4 clinical studies. It is certified by the Cologne List and Informed Sport. At www.drinkag1.com/mgschichte, you currently get €20 off your first order, as well as 5 AG1 travel packs for on the go, a bottle of vitamin D3 and K2, and the welcome kit for free. The subscription can be cancelled or paused at any time. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's absolutely no risk for you. Russia is trying to respond to this emergency by applying pressure. In addition to the previously discussed methods of forged signatures, the measures are now expanding. Students report that the pressure on them is massively increasing to sign one-year contracts with the unmanned forces, that is, the drone forces. In some cases, students who are at risk of failing are being sold the idea of joining the drone forces as the only way to avoid being expelled from the university. A student told CNN that he was summoned to a group meeting that was exclusively intended for those individuals who were missing credits, whether in coursework or exams, referred to as debts in Russian, and who had fallen behind. They strongly suggested that this would be beneficial for those with a lot of debts, he said. Another reported that the student office at his university had expelled almost a third of our group from the university a few weeks ago and forced them to sign a contract on the spot to keep their place in the program. He forwarded messages from a student group chat from that day to CNN. A third student in the chat, who admits that he has already been expelled from the university, replies, "By Monday, it will be too late. On Friday, all the orders will be signed. Those who could be drafted into the army must either do military service or sign a contract there. Or they sign now and operate drones 30 to 40 kilometers from the front." Those are the words of the head of the student office. Student office. In June, videos surfaced showing men in Penza being forcibly recruited. The reports are somewhat contradictory, as the local authorities claim it was only about the arrest of draft dodgers and newly naturalized citizens who had not registered in the conscription lists. However, there are several videos, one of which is particularly revealing. A resident of Penza published a video in which women try to fend off men at the gate of the military service office in Penza after a raid. Meduza found out that the video was recorded in front of the military service office building in the Oktyabrski district and Zheleznodorozhny district in Penza. The video was published the day before, on June 17, on VKontakte. Women are gathering around the minibus where men are sitting. One of them screams hysterically, "They don't even give us 5 minutes to say goodbye. Why don't you allow it?" A male voice answers her, "Because you behave like this." Later, the author addresses the men in the minibus. "Guys, tell me, did you all voluntarily sign a contract?" Another woman screams, "You were forced. Say it." The Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service reports further examples. At the same time, the Kremlin has set mechanisms in motion that can hardly be described as voluntary. In the Ryazan region, companies with more than 150 employees were required to provide a set number of workers to the army. The situation is similar in other regions. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Science and Higher Education, together with the military offices, has tasked the leadership of 190 to 200 technical and regional universities with ensuring that at least 2% of male students sign a military service contract. Pressure from above is also increasing. The Prosecutor General's office received the mandate for comprehensive monitoring of the conscription process. This includes military offices and employers, as well as schools, universities, and security agencies. The State Duma has legally established the duty of law enforcement agencies to carry out preventive work with those who refuse military service. In fact, the prosecutor's office is becoming another tool of mobilization management. Another figure is also telling. The number of people incarcerated in the Russian Federation has dropped to its lowest level since the early 2000s, from 465,000 at the end of 2021 to the current 282,000. The head of the Federal Penitentiary Service explains this quite simply. People are being sent to war. Russia is trying to maintain offensive pressure by recruiting personnel everywhere. Not only specialists are being sent to the front, but also disabled people. In May, a Russian soldier sent a video to his relatives in which he says, "We're heading out on a combat mission. 2 submachine guns, 3 bulletproof vests for 6 men. Everyone is disabled. This is just complete nonsense." Sergei had signed a contract because he had large debts and was promised he would be stationed at a checkpoint in the rear area. Instead, he was sent on assault missions, even after he was wounded. After he sent the video to his family, he didn't get in touch anymore. The use of wounded soldiers for assaults is now widely confirmed, even by Russian military bloggers, and has been repeatedly confirmed here on the channel in the past. This explains a major reason for the declining recruitment numbers. because the willingness to believe the promises of the Russian military has decreased. Meanwhile, more Russians are realizing the military is willing to sacrifice their lives. They mislead you before you sign the contract. How does signing it result in deception? A soldier tells a Russian mill blogger, "Frontline soldier Kai has issued a very clear warning to anyone planning to sign a contract. According to him, you're already being deceived in the very first phase when someone tells you that you'll be safe, working from home, and drinking tea far from the front." Russia's options are getting smaller. Either it has to scale back its offensive efforts so much that it no longer loses more soldiers than it recruits. However, that will make it easier for the Ukrainians to repel the Russians. If fewer soldiers are sent on infiltration missions, naturally, fewer will reach the forward positions. That reduces their chances against the Ukrainians, both in attack and when Ukrainian soldiers come to clear their positions. The other alternative will be a return to coercion, mobilization. Currently, if a mobilization is actually declared, which before the elections or, for example, in the fall, is unlikely to happen. Unless our opponents deal us a particularly painful blow, the armed forces will be confronted not with a large number of reinforcements, but with the problem of many draft dodgers. And even those who could be mobilized are difficult to equip, provide with shoes, arm, and organize. And finally, the central question will come up. And how are those who have been mobilized actually supposed to be deployed? There definitely won't be enough drones, electronic warfare systems, and air defense systems for all of them. In other words, exactly what is urgently needed right now. And to overwhelm the enemy through numerical superiority? That phase is already over. That should have been done between 2022 and 2024. Maybe even in 2025, although I doubt that. But now, considering the modern development of the enemy's weapon systems, the rule is, the more massive the attack, the more corpses on the attacker's side, with the same very modest results. The Russian mill blogger officer at the front comments sarcastically, "The personnel crisis is intensifying." The plan to recruit contract soldiers for the year 2026 has fallen short by 15 to 20%. There is a constant shortage of personnel. The army has problems everywhere. It is a systematic crisis that affects all levels. With each day, it gets worse. The risk of demoralization and a withdrawal of combat strength is growing. And on days like these, the following words come to mind. The only thing Russia does not forgive its czars for is lost wars. Thank you also to the supporters on YouTube as well as here on Patreon. Special thanks to Lieutenant Colonel Mahamori and to Lieutenants Finn, 5, Farb, Flecktan, Jans vom Eck, Uwe Diefren, De Vreden, Nickname Tubib, Carsten Schulz, Tequila 42 Immelkopf, Pate, Floja, Capri, Bertenment, Lichtshatter, NTX, Malermeister, Nagel, Markus F., Alex Rosenthal, Matt Rosenthal, Matt Best, Sick Rider, Möter, Janis Gu, Sascha Müller, Cunningham, Stress. Thank you very much. Without you, this would not be possible.